Alright, so now it's time to move on to the rear. First thing you're going to want to do, chock the front wheels. Grab some jack stands, and then break some wheel bolts loose. So for this portion, we can't really mount in the center for the rear, so we're going to go ahead and use the factory jack area, and that's where we'll place our jack. Alright, so after removing the wheel, and we're going to go ahead and remove the fender liner using the little plastic trim remover and 10mm. So before we start tearing out the fender liner, we're going to have to remove this one bottom plastic bolt with a T20. You'll find it right under the rear driver's side. And we're going to remove the plastic fender liner. So we're going to go ahead and trace this wire right here back to the top of the fender well. Then we're going to go ahead and remove the wire that's attached to the shock. So to remove the plug, we're going to have to pull on this lever right here. And then it'll just pop right out. Go ahead and remove the wire and get it out of your way. I'm going to go ahead and put the little lever we knocked off with the screwdriver back in. So to loosen the towing arm, we're going to use a 10mm Allen and a 18mm wrench to loosen her up. So to get this tow arm out of the way, I'm going to hold it up to this bolt with 2 zip ties. Like so. So getting this out of the way is going to give us access to the control arm bolt right over there. For the sway bar, we're going to use a 16mm wrench and a 16mm socket and get her loose. And now remove the plastic cover. So the sway bar will kind of stay out of the way by itself. Just gives you more room to work with. So we're going to get rid of the brake line bracket using some vice grips.
It's not the brake line, it's grips.
So using some vice grips, I'm going to bend this bracket and get it out of the way for this line right here. So to support the shock, we're going to be using a jack and a wrench, as so. So with a 16mm socket on one side and a 16mm wrench on the other, we're going to place the jack right under the shock to give it some support, and go ahead and loosen this thing up. And then release support from the jack. Might make a little clunking sound. So we're going to go ahead and throw a vise at the bottom end of the shock right here to keep it from spinning while we try to remove the top from the body. Like so. So remove the plastic trim pieces on the interior. I'm going to remove it from here and in here and one inside of here. And then using a 16mm socket, remove the top mount strut. Nice. Go ahead and pry the rubber piece here from the top. Like so. So, to remove the bellow for the air suspension, we don't really want to drop the subframe. If you want to do that, you can go ahead and drop the subframe, but we're just going to cut it right out. So, we went ahead and cut right here, this little line. And it looks from this angle coming in. Looks a little something like that. That's where we went ahead and cut it. As you can see, right over here. One second. Like so. You can hear the air hissing out. So similar to the front, we're going to go ahead and use a 10 mil to remove that airline. Be located right along here towards the back. Kind of come at it like a screwdriver, just like the fronts.
It's a long process. They don't use.
So this clip right here. Now this clip. This clip right about here. This is what we're gonna have to remove, and we use a screwdriver to use so. We'll yank it right out. And then we're gonna use clippers and cut the zip tie right up here. Afterwards, we're gonna tuck these air wires out of the way. Really, it's ultimately up to your choice. You can cut it out, whatnot. Using a jack to support the control arm, we can also go ahead and attach a 21mm wrench and a 21mm socket to each side, like so. Loosen the jack, give it some force. Alright, since we're removing the caliper, we're going to go ahead and disconnect the SBC.
Just pull up on this bad boy.
So just pop this bad boy right out. So we're going to be using an 18 external Torx to remove the brake caliper. Located right here. So, using a 12mm Allen and a 21mm wrench, I'm going to go ahead and attach the Allen to one side, right there. And 21mm right here. Okay. So as you're loosening, the caliper is going to start falling a bit.
We don't want it off all the way.
Yeah, we really don't want it off. We just want it to move out of the way. With the nut on the other side, we're going to go ahead and push it all the way through.
Let's put the caliper back in place for now.
Let's put the caliper back in place for right now.
And block it.
So we're going to be lifting that exhaust out of the way using a jack and a block of wood. Main reason being is that exhaust will get in the way. Make sure to jack it up real good. So we're going to be using an M12 triple square socket and an 18mm wrench right here. We've already got that exhaust right in the way. Just go ahead and manually twist the rest of that bolt out. So that nut just totally came flying at us. So next step is we're just gonna pull down that arm right there. Boom.
Kind of wiggle it out.
Just wiggler. Like that. And then just yank out that bellow right there. You might hear some air coming out. That's just totally normal. She's out. And if you haven't already, just finish cutting that line like I mentioned earlier. There you go. So we're going to be using the control arm from an E320 CDI. So get to play around with it.
It's very awkward to push in.
So we're going to keep that jack stand on just so we don't put too much pressure on the exhaust. Not only that, it's kind of hard to jack it back up to that height once it's already been jacked up. So we're going to go ahead and use a crowbar to try to help position this CDI. Now the struggle is going to be trying to get these holes to line up so we can clear a bolt right through here. Once again, we're going to be moving that caliper. Once we got everything lined up, we're going to go ahead and send that bolt right through. Money went right through. Using a wrench in place, we're just going to go ahead and spin it on. And you're just going to have to trust me, it's a lot easier. Now tighten that bolt. So following the steps in reverse, go ahead and throw that caliper back on. Alright, insert the new shock. Alright, go ahead and right now would be a decent time to adjust the preload. And this is only a temporary part, just so the shock doesn't fall out. So we're going to go ahead and line up the jack. First you're going to want to line that control arm, and then we're going to go ahead and insert the spring. Use the jack for this process as well. Insert spring.
And make
sure the spring is properly seated in the control arm. Now, align the spring on top. Using the jack stand, push it up. So, to get more room, we had to swap out the other jack right there for a scissor jack. So now go ahead, line up the control arm, and now just jack it up. Now getting these holes to line up, it's going to be a bit of a challenge. You're going to have to play with it for a little bit. Do some pushing, some pulling, some sliding, etc. But you're going to want these holes right here to line up. So we ended up having to use the crowbar to help line everything up. There's no really definitive way, you just have to play around with it. And now we're just going to be adjusting our preload. Adjusting preload is going to be done to your settings, however you want it set. Alright, so top half of the bushing is going to slide right over the bolt for the strut, like so. Final product will look a little something like that.
And the nut goes.
Slide the washer and the nut over it. We're going to do the same thing. We're just going to throw some vice grips on that shock, stop it from spinning. We're going to tighten the top. So with the 14mm, we're going to tighten the top hat. Then next up is we're going to reinstall that sway bar end link. Next up, we're going to get that sway bar back on there. I'm going to attach this sway bar end link back onto there. Now we're going to put that rear tow arm back on.
I was like, oh, they're not married yet. That's interesting.
And the rest is self-explanatory. You're going to want to watch the video in reverse. You're going to want to put the fender liner back in, put all the clips for the trunk back in, tighten everything up to spec if you haven't already.
What's on the ground?